such a meaningful proverb for what we're going to talk about today, about connection and belonging and the importance of that in moving us forward. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to spend with me today and for your commitment to the topic. And we're going to explore that together. And if, with your permission, I'm going to hold my nose. So it makes me feel better. That I can connect more with you instead of being in my head. So I work in the field of diversity and inclusion, and my passion is challenging people to see more. Because when we see more, we connect with each other, and we can create that sense of belonging. Can I tell you a little bit why I'm passionate about these things? Thanks. So I come from a family where we were all pretty committed to the perspectives and the stories that we had about each other. And because of that commitment to those stories and perspectives, we didn't really connect. And it limited who we were as people, and it limited what we could do as a family, still today. I'm also biracial. And so with that, coming from my dad's Jamaican, my mother's Austrian, coming from a place of being biracial has felt really lonely and homeless to me. So I've been searching my whole life for a sense of belonging, for a sense of place. And then in university, I had a really amazing experience that changed my life. And I'd like to share that experience with you if I may today. Is that okay with you? So I was an athlete in high school. And when I got to university in my first year, in the absence of a track team, which is what I did in high school, I decided to join the swim team. Why not? Try something new. I showed up for tryouts in so you need to picture this, a pink and black leopard print bathing suit with a scoop back. Can you see that? All right, so if you're not a swimmer, there's a difference between a bathing suit, which is about fashion, and a swimsuit, which is about function. So everyone else on the swim team, all the other girls on the swim team were wearing their functional Speedo crisscross. Not me. So that was one. Secondly, I was the only person on the pool deck who was brown. Now in India that might not mean much, but in the Canadian context, that was huge. I didn't know that all swimmers, most swimmers at that time, and still today, are white. So now you imagine me, I'm 6 feet tall, I was 6 feet tall then too, I'm in my black and pink leopard print bathing suit, and I walk out onto the pool deck, and the conversation stops. Conversation stops, everybody turns to look at me, and of course I want to disappear. I want to make myself as small as possible, and I'm like, when are we getting into the water? When are we going to get into the water? We get into the water, and things don't get any better for me. I discovered that I didn't know the intricacies of swimming etiquette. I didn't know how to execute a proper flip turn, and I was slow. I was slow. I was fast in high school. I was a fast runner, but I was slow in the water. So by the end of the 1.5 long hours of tryout, I had moved from the fast lane where I thought I should be to the slow lane. I had pissed off a bunch of swimmers, and I was still trying to catch my breath at the edge of the pool, and I really wanted to disappear. That could have been the end of my swimming career, but it wasn't, because I bought myself a swimsuit with the crisscross back, and I went back for the second tryout. You're probably wondering why I did that. They were probably wondering why I did that, and I actually could tell that they were wondering why I did that. There were stares, there was like, what's she doing here again? But I got back, I put my cap and goggles on, I did my stretching, and I hopped into the pool. I'd like to tell you it went better, but it didn't. I was still slow, I was still in the way, I still wasn't a real swimmer. But something quite magical happened at the end of that tryout. The head coach took me aside and he said, I can't put you on the competitive team, which is fairly obvious, but if you're serious about swimming, I'll put you on the B team. You can come in the morning at the 5:30 practice, which nobody really wants to come to, and the pool has much more space, and I'll work with you. And so I took him up on his offer. And at the end of those 4 years of my university, I had one of the fastest 50 freestyles in the country, and my time was still in the top 10 after I left for several years. So I'm not telling you this story because it's a swimming story. I'm telling you this story because it changed my life. That coach saw more than what you could see. He saw my potential, he saw what I could do, and he made space for that to become a reality. It was amazing. And I've never met anybody like that since. So it's changed how I do my work. It's changed how I approach inclusion. It's changed how I approach diversity, and I challenge people every day to see more, because I think that's important. We miss a lot when we just, pay attention to what we think we know about something. So now I get my notes again. Flip the page. So in the time that we have today, I'm going to give you some tips and tools so that you can begin to see more, so that you can begin to create those spaces for people to blossom, to be. I heard you. Thank you. For people to be all of who they are. And for those of you that want to know more, that want to go a little bit deeper, you'll notice that there's sheets on the table. You can stay connected with me, and I'd like you to fill those in. Hi, welcome. Come on in. So I'm committed to fairness, belonging, being a little goofy, which you haven't noticed already. And so what that means for me is that everybody gets a chance to play in the sandbox, that we play fair in the sandbox, and that everybody has a place at the table. Not just a seat at the table, but a place. And what that means is that we're valued and we're valuable. We have something to contribute. When that happens, magic can happen. When belonging happens, magic can happen. You want to say that together with me for a second? When belonging happens, magic happens. Absolutely does. Absolutely does. So, remember the proverb that I said at the beginning? You want to go far, go together. It doesn't say if you want to go far, take somebody with you. It doesn't say if you want to go far, don't go alone. It says go together. What does that mean? That's a quality. That's a way of being. It's a way of connecting with somebody. It implies belonging. It implies inclusion. We're doing it together. So how do we get there? So what we're going to talk about today in the time that I have left are 3 secrets, 3 steps to help us to broaden our awareness of each other so that we can see each other more and do more together, go further together. Right? So the first step, the first secret is see more than what you think you can see. See more than you see with your eyes. So, keep the mic closer. Keep it closer. So what we need to remember is that we see with our eyes, and we use that to judge. We use that to think that we know who somebody is. And what happens when we do that is we cut ourselves off from who that person actually is, who that person can be. So my swim coach saw my skin color, my bathing suit, and how awkward I was in the water, but he also saw more. He took the time to see some more. So I want you to think of a time, I want you to think of what people see in you. When they look at you, what do they see? When you look at me, what do you see? What are some of the things that you see with your eyes? Just call it out.
Oh, great dress.
A great dress. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm glad I'm here. What else? What do you see? Tall. I'm tall. Okay, that's a physical term. What else? What else do you see with your eyes about me? What do you see? Calmness. Okay, do you see that, or is that what you're creating with what you see?
No, I'm seeing it and I'm hearing it in my voice.
Okay, great, thank you. What else do you see? That's it? That's all you got? All right, so I'm tall. You might notice I'm brown. You might notice like with my hair, right? You might notice that I'm female. Those are all things about me. Those are all characteristics about me that are true, right? What we do then is that we take what we see and we make a story. So you might think you know some things about me based on what you see. My body looks a certain way. You might have a certain idea about, my what shape I'm in, right? Things like that. What does that do? Come on in. Come.
Okay,
the water's fine. We're just talking about the stories that we create about people based on what we see. So what happens with those stories is that they cut us off from each other. So the question that you can ask yourself to start seeing more is it true? Is the story, is what I'm thinking about this person, is it true? What does that do? It allows you to examine that it's a thought, not the truth. And it creates a crack in that story that you started to create about the person. So that's the first secret. opportunity to let your awareness, this new awareness, expand your mind and who you're being with that person. So my coach saw all the same things again as my swim team mates did, but he allowed a new perspective to form, and then he played with that perspective. He didn't say, you don't belong here, get out. He said, come back. See if you want to explore this. See what happens. We'll work together. So how do you move from seeing more to being more? All of the things that you may have said or didn't say that you were thinking that you saw, what's the story that you're creating? Maybe my fitness level, maybe what languages do I speak, maybe where I'm from, all those things. And if you didn't go there right away, if somebody were to say to you, hey Annemarie, what do you think about her? What do you think? What do you think she does? Or do you think she has a family? Your mind would create answers, right? Even without realizing it. So, where do those stories come from? What helps us make the leap from what we see to what we think we know about somebody? Those are assumptions. Those are judgments. Those are stereotypes. Some of the things that we learn, right? Maybe if you have a certain body type, you're probably in shape. It's an assumption, but we learn it. We see it over and over again in the media. And some of those things we soak up unconsciously from the world around us. It's called unconscious bias. And the media gives us messages 24/7 now about who people are, who you are because of what you look like, who has value, and who doesn't. And whether we realize it or not, we soak up those messages and they come out in those stories that we think about other people. And we often don't check them. So the part about seeing more is it allows you to start seeing those assumptions, to start seeing those stories, to start examining those stories. And the question you want to ask yourself, the second question is, how do I know it's true? How do I know it's true? How are you going to know unless you ask? When we ask, we create the opportunity to really get to know somebody, to really see them, to really start connecting with them. And when we connect with each other, we create a sense of belonging. And from that sense of belonging can grow inclusion. I've been doing this work for a long time. I've been doing this work for almost 20 years. Diversity and inclusion is a big thing in North America, right, Samir? You know that?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
what frustrates me over and over again is that we're still having the same conversations. We're still seeing the same issues. We're still seeing the same people in positions of power and the same people who are not in positions of power. And why is that happening? And then last year I came across a book by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. Anybody read it? Fabulous, right? Changed my life. Simon talks about circles of safety. He talks about creating a sense of belonging in organizations. And I thought, oh my gosh, we've been having the wrong conversation. Because inclusion, I firmly believe now that inclusion is not a thing you focus on. Inclusion is an outcome. And what is it an outcome of? It's an outcome of awareness, belonging, connection. Those are my new ABCs. The ABCs of inclusion. So what we're doing today is the awareness piece. Who are we seeing? What are we seeing? What are we making that mean? And how do we dismantle that? So the being more takes your story. Seeing more makes a crack in that story. Being more takes your story and it starts to peel it away. So you can actually see the person in front of you or the situation in front of you. It applies to situations as well. The third secret is go further. Remember the proverb? If you want to go alone, if you want to go far, go together. So going further. What does that mean? What do we do with this new awareness? I see you a little bit more now, right? I maybe ask you some questions. We're talking. I'm getting to know you. What do we do with that? Where can we go with that? How do we explore that? That's the place at the table. That's having everybody around, talking, sharing, putting in their perspective, challenging different experiences, different awarenesses, and moving to a whole new place we might not have imagined before. Because we can't. Because we haven't heard from everybody. We haven't taken the opportunity to connect, to create that sense of belonging that allows people to blossom, that allows people to show up in a way that they otherwise might not have. So what did the coach do? The coach made room for me on the team. He didn't say, go and practice and come back. He said, come. Practice with us. I'll work with you. And we'll to see what happens. And I told you what happened. It was pretty phenomenal. It's one of the best things I've ever done, except for having a child. That's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So we have 3 questions. Is it true? What if it's not? And then, is it true? How do I know? And the third question, for the going further, is what if it's not true? What if what I'm thinking about you, what if the story that I'm spinning in my head about you or the situation is not true? What am I going to do differently? How am I going to be different with you? How are we going to move forward together in a new way? What am I missing if it's not true? 3 powerful questions. So going further makes room for a whole new story. You've created the crack in the story, you've peeled away the story, now you're creating a new story together. That's the power of awareness that leads to connection, that leads to belonging, that allows us to be in a state of inclusion, that I believe allows us to go further together. So, I want to make room for our next speaker to share her insights and magic with us. The magic starts with seeing more. That's the first piece of this puzzle, seeing more. And so that's something that you can cultivate. It's something that you can practice. It's something that you can get better at. It requires patience. It requires compassion for yourself and others. It requires, and it does require practice. But it's something that I believe that we can learn over time, that we can cultivate over time, that we can get better at over time. Those stories never go away, but we can examine them and inquire what they mean and how they stop us from connecting with each other. If that's something that you'd like to practice more, if that's something that you'd like to cultivate in your life, then I invite you to go further together with me. And on your table there's some connection cards you can fill out. I'm happy to send you my 4 tips for the ways diversity and inclusion can help grow your business. And what you'll get when you fill out that form and leave it with me is a weekly email from me called the Inclusion Insight, where I take a situation or an event and I dig a little bit deeper to invite us to see more and explore what else there could be, what else that means, what else that says to us. And I give you a little challenge so you can practice during the week. Practice building more muscle. So those are the three things. Remember what they are? See more than you can see. Be more than you otherwise thought you could be, and go further. And the 3 questions to ask yourself to build that awareness so that we can connect with each other and create belonging is it true? How do I know? What if it's not? And I believe that those things help us to peel away the stories so that we can really see each other, so people can really blossom, and that we can benefit from the amazing uniqueness of each human being that we make room for and a place for around whatever table we have, whether it's family, whether it's community, whether it's business. So I invite you to try that and practice that in your life. And I thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. It's yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemarie. Now I invite Mariam Tendou, Kamara. She will share her views.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for coming in a bit late. I actually came in late to the whole conference because I just left it yesterday. I'm from Guinea, Senegal, and I was asked to participate in this session. I was scheduled on a session on the 9th, but this one is very close to the one I was going to present on the 9th. I live in Senegal, and I'm the founder of an organization called Tendou, and we work on empowering women from the formal and informal sector, women entrepreneurs, to thrive through the digital economy. And why do we do that? Because I'm going to just tell you a little bit more of my background. I actually work for UN Women, which is the UN entity for gender equality and women's empowerment for 5 years as the regional communications and advocacy person for West and Central Africa. And through that time, I noticed that while the UN organization worked with these operational and normative framework to really help and support women individuals, and women and men, but in this case, our beneficiaries are really women. I realized that getting to the grassroots and really to get to this private sector target beneficiaries of women was a little bit more challenging because we don't work directly. This is an intergovernmental organization working with states and stakeholders, and when they work with civil societies through NGOs. A lot of the women entrepreneurs are not necessarily getting any type of support or help, training, capacity building. We're talking about women who want to, earn a living, a decent living, and get to another level. We're not just talking about micro initiatives in any rural area because you want to help your family. We want to talk about these women are watching models they're seeing on TV or radio, and they want to get to that level. So what we notice is that once you come with a project and you support a specific group, when the project dies, what happens? What is the sustainability model? So we realized that empowering women, getting them to really realize their own potential was becoming a very important part of the process. And with the digital economy, we realized that the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor in 2012 said that Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest entrepreneurship rate for female entrepreneurship rate at 27%. I'm translating in French in my head actually as I'm speaking to you. The whole idea was that this is an untapped potential that I think that more and more we'll see more people taking initiatives in that regard. And to complete what Madam Annemarie was talking about, what I will say to add to that is that how can we get individuals, whether it's people who are supposed to give funding to organizations and initiatives, or whether it's beneficiaries who are actors who are on the field doing their work, emotional intelligence to me is key. We need to talk more about it. We need to train more women about what emotional intelligence is about, because I think it's a two-way process. Not only it empowers the person who uses emotional intelligence, but also I think that it also has a positive effect on the person that is receiving information or receiving the service. What is that? I come in your room, I don't know any of you, and I'm trying to use my own experience, my own ability to understand based on my own experience what anybody sitting in front of me is thinking. And all of that has to happen really quick because I have a very short window to be able to grasp in my head what I need to do to connect with all of you at the same time. Now, that raises very high depending on the profile of the person. And when we're talking about different levels, and we're talking about in our countries, at least in my region, we're talking about people who are not completely literate, or they haven't really traveled, maybe not even from one town to another. You have to find a way and adapt that way to their reality. But all of them are gifted with some form of emotional intelligence based on their experience. So the idea is that we need to think outside the box and make sure that we start talking the language on a human-to-human level, and taking experiences from experts from the globe, but making sure that we acknowledge that cultural differences matter. That when I come here, I introduce myself as someone from some country, but I'm speaking your language. But like I said, I'm translating in my head really fast so that I can not only connect with you, get the code, depending on what accent I have, you may immediately understand what I'm saying, but you may not. But I'm trained to speak to someone from Asia, from India, from Europe, from America at the same time and understand their perspectives. So that makes me, I'm not going to try to make myself look like a super person, but I'm saying that a lot of time people who can train on their emotional intelligence have faster ways to connect. And yes, one of the strengths I've shared is that I connect easily with people, but it's because my parents were living in Liberia, so I was born in Liberia. I went to high school in Paris. I got my baccalaureate in Paris. I went to study in the US, where I lived for 17 years, came back to Guinea, stayed there for 5 years, then married a Senegalese, where I've lived for 7 years. So you see, I rotate easy. And then when through my work, through the UN, I must have traveled over, 20 or 30 countries across Africa. And, through missions and going, and these missions are really intense, 2 weeks, 10 days, 7 days, and you have to read so much and connect really quickly. And so you're trained to really get the right codes. And then you have to also be sensitive. There's cultural, religious, language, all kinds of diplomatic, political sensibilities. So you're getting all that information, and your job is on the line because you have to do it right. And you're in communication, so you're speaking out to the world, and you can get fired, even if it's not your fault, just because you're the head person that's doing the communications. So it trained me to really learn how to understand things really quickly. And I think that that's something that I would like to transfer in the work I do today. Now, it's been 2 years that I've opened a consulting firm. And just about a year ago, we launched this initiative called Mariam Digital. She Goes Digital. And like I said, it's about supporting women to really use their own skills wherever they are. We've met women. We're working with one of the global leaders in shipping, Mariam. Some of you know them. I think they're based in Sweden. And Mariam is based in Senegal, and they work with a lot of people. They're a business machine. But they lately were really interested in women, entrepreneurs, because 50% of their clients based in Senegal and West Africa are women. And a lot of them are women in the informal sector. Now, some of them are very financially secure. These are women who started with, I'd say, $50, $100 in our currency, and over 10 years, 10, 15, 20 years, they've built an empire. These are women who will not speak to you in French or English or not. They don't have any type of diploma. But they travel to China, to Dubai, they go in, they have their network, and they ship all these containers, and they come and they sell their goods. And they're doing really well. Now, I'm thinking today that they also want to be able to use the online world to be able to connect with all what the online world has to offer. But they have to be able to also connect with the world the way it is, in a way that could be beneficial for their countries, so for their businesses. So one of the things that we're saying is that we're going to these different companies and we're saying, we will help you. We know where these women are. We know what they need. We will help you, train them to be able to use your e-services so that they don't have to travel all the way to some country these days. They can have a catalog online. They can connect with these things without, but they have your culture, your company culture has to connect with them, and they have to connect with your culture, even if it's business. So those are the things that we're trying to propose as strategies, so that we can have them be included, so that also that these women are not just seen as, recipientary of a transaction, but they're human beings with a story. The last point I will say is that a lot of times when we are talking about women in our region and in our countries, so I go to this funder and I say I want to organize a session between corporations, executives, and women from the informal sector. The funder says, oh yeah, sure, that's a great idea, let's go, we're going to do this in the marketplace. And I said, no, they're not going to go to the marketplace. Oh yeah, but no, you're not supposed to take them out of their environment because that's their environment, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, because any human being, and I'm a woman, you are, when you want to go somewhere where you have to network, where you have to present yourself in the best possible way, you're not going to be going where you go every day to do your work. You're going to dress up and go and connect with people. If you don't teach that to women who are in the marketplace, and you're always going to find representatives to go speak on their behalf. So I am going to organize a nice little gathering in the fanciest hotel or restaurant or whatever, where I'm going to bring these women, and they're going to meet and connect directly with the different decision makers that would like to, believe in their stories and support their stories. And after a lot of discussions, we did it, and it was one of the most successful events. That's actually how we launched this initiative. Is that we really got a group of entrepreneur women that came outside of their own area. We put them in an area. We did not speak for them. They had their own voices. We led them. We had people who were translating. If there was a national language translator. But what we did is that we let them be who they are, and once you entrust them with that sense of power, believe me, anybody will speak. When they were dressed up so nicely, they were so beautiful. It was like this conference here. I mean, these are women that had things to say. They are forced to rent, but they don't need a bank to loan them money. Why would you not take them into a place where people are decision makers to be able to have them share their stories? So I'm not going to speak more because I think that I don't know if there's one more person. Oh, I see there's another session that's been okay. But that's really the story I want to share. I'm very happy to be here and to have been able to share with my story. There's a lot more that I could share, but I think that I'll let you guys ask questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Do we have time for questions?
Yes, I don't know if you have time.
We do. We have 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Let's sit over here. Let's sit together. And then the camera person doesn't have to move around. Okay. Now we can chat. We can do questions. Any questions? Or stories that you want to share? Samir in the back.
Yes, I had a question for you about diversity. If you could just maybe comment on like how challenging it is when people think about diversity. Sometimes they just want to check a box, like, hey, I have that covered, like somebody's white, somebody's black, somebody's brown. And diversity is a way of thinking, and diversity can be classified in terms of age, gender, and race. And you being an expert on diversity, I'd just love to hear how you frame that framework.
How I frame diversity.
Exactly.
Yes, it is. Okay, so thanks for the question. It's an amazing question. Often when we hear the word diversity, we think culture. In Canada, anyways, right? We think people who are white, people who are not. But diversity is, as you mentioned, so much broader than that. What's the definition of diversity? What do you think? The word diversity, what's the definition? There's biodiversity. What's the definition of diversity?
Difference.
Yes, who said that? Yes. The definition of diversity is different. So as soon as you have two people in a room, you have diversity. And sometimes we think if we look the same, there's no diversity. Or for the same gender, there's no diversity. There's so many things about us, right? So you mentioned, so there's how we look, there's how we speak, there's how we think, there's our abilities, seen and unseen, there's our sexual orientation, there's what we believe in, there's our gender identity, there's so many things. How we process information. Then you can bring in all the experiences that we've had, our perspective, all of that is part of diversity. So if we think narrowly about what we can see, or even about who we are as a person, what makes us who we are in a tangible way, and we forget the intangible, we miss out on so much. That's why a lot of companies are talking about emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, right? Because we're expanding how we see what somebody has to offer, what somebody can bring to the table. Now the tricky part, I'm going to go a little bit further with your question. The difference between diversity and inclusion is huge, right? Because diversity is who's there. And inclusion is the space we create to allow the people who are there to show up, to share their perspective, right? Just like what you're mentioning, right? The women that want to participate, that want to grow their business, to be seen, to contribute, right? How do we allow those people to show up? That's the inclusion piece. And that comes back to safety that Simon talks about in his book, Leaders Eat Last, to the belonging, to the connection. How do we create that space? So I hope that answers your question. Hopefully you got a little bit more. Kai, you had a question?
Yeah, one of the areas of diversity that we haven't mentioned is one around age.
Yes, absolutely.
When you were standing there earlier, I would have made an assumption about how old you are, because that's something that we do automatically.
Absolutely.
Compared to me, how old is this person? And then once you start to talk and you say, I've been doing this work for 20 years, my internal calibrator goes, oh, older than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many years do I have now?
I know. So for me, obviously, as I'm getting older, it's more interesting how people perceive me and what age they think I am. And then whether I've got a seat at the table because I'm either too old or not old or whatever. I just wondered if you got any comments on the age factor?
There's so many comments on the age factor, and then if you have some comments, please give me the mic. Age is so tricky, right? And if you think about it, we're all going to get a chance to be various ages. So, right? And, you know, in the same, to various and lesser degrees, depending on what the universe has in store for us. But if you remember back to when you were small, there were things you weren't allowed to do because of your age. If you think about where we're going to get to, there's going to be things that people don't think we should be doing or don't think we can do because of our age. And it's so limiting, right? Our age provides us with opportunity, and we bring all the experiences that we've had and we can share those and apply those in ways. And so what we're seeing in the workplace a lot is that people of a certain age, older, right, 50 plus, we start to say, too old, can't change, not up with the times. We don't want to invest the time into you because you only have so much work time left. So we're going to pick somebody younger who is maybe more malleable, or maybe has better ideas, or they're more connected to the technology that's happening now. And on either side of that spectrum, we have the negative opportunity to limit what that person could provide to us. But those barriers are very, very real on both ends of the spectrum. Millennials get hit with all sorts of negative assumptions about who they are and what they can or cannot do, and older generations get hit with all sorts of assumptions and barriers about what they can or cannot do. And in the middle, you know, there's a whole other set of assumptions and barriers. So again, who are we seeing, and what do we think? Who do we think that they are based on, in this case, age? And then, is it true? How do I know it's true? What if it's not? What am I missing? And taking the time to explore that allows us to unearth so many opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have had.
What I'll add is that, again, if we want to really talk about inclusion, you have to challenge yourselves as well. And that's the most difficult part, because like I said, we come with, I mean, if you're talking about age and you're 40 or you're 50 or you're 60, I mean, you can't deconstruct 40 or 50 or 60 just because at a certain point in your cycle, your life cycle, you decided to take a new path. A lot of women who are in entrepreneurship decided at some point that they're going to do this. I mean, you're not born saying that you're going to be an entrepreneur. Unless maybe you're coming from this family that has like a huge fortune to give to pass on, and you have to be predetermined to take on that challenge. But so a lot of time you have to do this change, and as we all know, change is uncomfortable, change is painful, etc., etc. And when it comes to the perception of age, again, I would say, depending on where you're coming from, in our country, it's the most sensitive issue and one of the most divisive. Because, again, these models that are coming, these success stories that are coming from the Airbnb and the Uber and the Facebook. Having lived in San Francisco, I can tell you these are like people who are very young, who started very young. It's not an issue, how old or whatever. It's just a different work culture. And if we're talking and we transfer these models to countries like the ones where I'm living in, and we don't factor in the fact that in my culture, in most, even some of the very well-established organizations, a young person, even qualified, cannot just publicly challenge someone with the same level in terms of, if you have the same post level and you make some type of comment that the person feels humiliated, or even, not even humiliated, it doesn't mean too much. I mean, just challenging that person, which is not supposed to be a challenge in a different culture. So this whole issue of age, you always have to put in something like, big brother, big sister, or something that shows respect, because respect is such a huge part of our way of communicating. That's why I say that how can we, adapt and transform people's lives, knowing that yes, what has worked somewhere else can work. The same ingredients will work, but we cannot just absorb it in a way that is not filtered. And a lot of times we receive models from aid for so many years, and how much of the women's lives have changed in a certain way. Yes, we know we've progressed when it comes to laws. There are more progressive laws in many parts of the world, including our countries. People understand this whole issue, even though some people are saying don't use the word gender, because again, that's divisive. In some areas, when you say gender equality, it's like we had to not say gender equality at all to say the same thing. So this whole issue of inclusion is a very powerful one, and I really like some of the things that you've said. Reminding, I think I always say to people I work with on both sides of the aisle, get a little bit of a dose of humility. Ask yourself, even when you're an expert, be humble enough to say, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I need to listen. At the end of the day, I think that that's the best way to write policies, develop frameworks, when you are humble to begin with. I don't think the Einsteins and these people were like, oh, I'm going to get this vaccine for it. I think it happened through really a question at the beginning, say, I don't know this, so I'm going to find out. But today, especially, and again, I want to really put that perspective. My perspective is from a developing country, emerging country or poor country, whatever word you want to use, where you receive. You don't have the power to decide and define. So the whole idea is that we want to say in the narrative, let's change that a little bit while we respect the help, the contribution, and all of the energies. We think that, again, to be able to be inclusive is to listen to those who don't have the same means, the same power, but certainly have something equally important to contribute to.
Thank you. That's so important. And I just want to jump back just for a second to your question, Pat. As women who are, and men who are maybe thinking about entrepreneurship, sometimes age becomes a limiting factor. I can't do this. I'm too old, right? So if you want to learn more about that, you need to go listen to Pat's session. What time is it at today?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, because Pat is all about becoming an entrepreneur in midlife. And tell us your title?
Hot Women Rock.
Hot Women Rock is the title of her book. And she has amazing things to say about that will expand your mind, expand your beliefs about who you are and what you can do, even in midlife. So I encourage you to go and hear Pat speak later on.
And I think there's one more question.
Another one, James.
Yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are on how to approach the issue of inclusion versus merit when you're working with policy organizations and so forth. I know that I've run into a lot of that just in groups that I've been part of, and it seems like a really tricky issue to balance. What are your recommendations with that? I mean, even in the reverse way, like American universities, a lot of the people who are more educated are coming from foreign countries because of our educational system not preparing students enough. So it can work both ways. How do you find a balance there in a way that respects everybody?
So in terms of how we see people and the access we give them to different things?
I'd say that, and if you're doing consulting, how do you balance those two different needs or imperatives within an organization?
If I understand correctly, what you're saying is that how do you know that, for example, I'm going to just take you as an example. You're an American, you're coming, and assuming. I said I checked myself. I still check myself.
Is it
I have
true?
humility. I'm not sure if you are there. The accent a little bit, but I'm not sure. Are you American?
Yes, I am.
But my emotional intelligence told me he was American. But what I want to say is that you're an American, you come to one of the countries that you're consulting for. And American system, and I'm the first one to say it, I've been Americanized so much. People think American. People are so about my culture, but the American system trains people in such a way that you have effective ways to work and produce, blah, blah, blah. I look at the good sides of that, and I always claim it. Now, when you come to certain countries, I'll get slower. And if I understand your question, how do you deal with wanting to get a system to be effective? effective, efficient, and based on competence and merit, and not leave anyone behind, basically, right? I feel that once you have decided to go in a different country, a different system, a different culture, that's where I say that inclusion that you want to call for, it has to come in. You have to invite in humility. And humility doesn't mean that you're giving up on your standards. It means that it's going to take longer to get to where you want to be, unless you're going to go to a place where it's going to be a bunch of just Americans working, and then people are going to be like, oh, this is imperialism. This is not, development. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So what I always tell my coworkers and my colleagues is that, and some are very good at it. They know, they understand that they're not saying. They will keep repeating, even if they have to repeat it 10 times. They will keep repeating the norms. This is the norm. This is the standard, and it's part of that capacity building that is not written in the contract, even though you call for contract. Let me just give you a very simple example. We had one time a call for terms of references. We were supposed to hire a videographer and a photographer. And, we did everything normally because you have to do a transparent, system where you're calling, getting CVs. So we received about 25 or 27 CVs in the car from photographers, videographers. Now, if you look at the norms that we got, top 10 were all foreign nationals, like foreigners, living in the car. So this was a national consultancy. But, the other was coming from Spain, the Beaux-Arts, and the other, the photographer in this gallery in the Louvre, New York, blah, 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 blah. I mean, there was no way any one national was going to be part of those 10. And comparatively speaking, there was no way the top 3 would even be one of the national. What I did suggest to my management is that because of the type of organization, the type of work we're doing, I said we have to make it inclusive, that we include one national as part of the criteria, including, having, anybody that has the merit, blah, blah, blah. So that you give a chance, and when you do that, you also have to include a training and, getting someone to get up to speed to understanding how to use a Drive, Dropbox, Flickr, WeTransfer. But you can't just assume that because you don't have that, then you're not doing development work. And it's very tough to do that in an environment where people are fast-paced. It's a regional office. People are working hard. They need results. Donors need results. And sometimes you also get the heat of it. People don't understand what you're doing. So it's not a very nice space to be, but I truly believe that development has to go through that. Because I've lived elsewhere, and I know that not everyone has the privilege to have parents and family that will pay for the schooling to go to the US and to come back. So my giving back was to say, we have to do this because we want to see also some African nationals getting to that kind of level of competence, even though we know that they're not there yet.
And I think to add to your question, at home, right? Because we have diversity at home too. There's development, and then there's immigration, and even people that are born in whatever country that are from different cultures, right? And that bring that different perspective. The challenge with merit is that we often confuse merit with what somebody looks like and what groups they belong to. Okay, and then we get that confused in our head, and I think, you're not fill in the blank, so you can't be qualified for this. Whoop, I put your resume aside, or I don't listen to your idea, or whatever. And so we have to challenge ourselves. Who do I see when I'm thinking leadership? Who do I see when I'm thinking head of a project? What kind of ideas am I open to exploring? Because when we're trying to create inclusion, what we're trying to do is see what else there is, right? What focused on how we think is the way to go, how we think it's going to happen. There's one question. Does that answer your question, James?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Ruth.
There's one more question at the back that I'm hoping, and then Samir, hopefully we'll have time to get back to you. What was your question?
So we spoke about that we look at people and then we create stories in our head based upon what we see. What I want to know is that how to see more than you can see, like how to inculcate that skill in ourselves to see more than what we see.
So that skill, those are those three questions that you ask yourself, right? Because when you start asking yourself, first of all, you have to notice that you're seeing something, right? That's the voice, the voice we have in our head that never stops talking to us. It's probably saying things now like, why is she doing this with her finger, and what's really going on up there. That voice talks to us all the time, right? You can call it your inner voice, your unconscious, whatever. But it's telling you stories, and it's using the information that we gather from around us, right? The unconscious bias, the assumptions, the stereotypes we have about people. Who has value, who doesn't have value, who should feel. If you close your eyes right now and think leadership, who comes to mind? The people that are in the media the most, right? And depending on where we are in the world, those people are going to look different. Okay? So first we have to realize that there's barriers to seeing each other. That's the first step. Then we need to ask ourselves questions. Is what I'm thinking about you true? Asking yourself that question stops the conversation from taking you into autopilot. You get to ask yourself some questions. Do I really believe that? How do I know that? Wow, that's an assumption. Ooh, that's a stereotype. Where did that come from? Is it something that I learned? Is it something that I didn't learn? Is it something that I'm picking up because of all the things I'm seeing in the media? Even if you think about beauty, if you walk by a magazine stand, who do you see on the cover? People are usually thin. In North America, they're usually white, right? They usually have long, straight hair. We're getting a little bit more diversity in there, but that trains us to think of what beauty is, right? So first you have to notice. Then you have to notice your story. Then you start to ask yourself, is that story true? How do I know it's true? What are the assumptions? And then ask yourself, what if it's not? That opens the space so that you can ask questions. Then we have to talk to people. I think you're like this. Well, let me see you. Where are you from? And what's your experience? And who are you? Right? That's how we find out about each other. That's how we learn about each other. And that's how we connect. By asking questions. We don't ask enough questions because we think we know. We need to ask more questions so we can really see each other and connect.
Sure. I want to add up. It actually is working really fine for me. I didn't know it was going to be that connection with her as well. I feel like I'm connecting. Every time she's saying something, I feel like I want to complete a little bit of that. But I also wanted to say that the reverse is true. So there's, and again, I'm always speaking from my perspective, from my experience in my region. So we always assume that, the victim is always the powerless, and, because of all the history, colonization, neo-colonization, economic, blah, 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 blah. We all know the story. But I do the same fight also with people from my own community, from my own background, because the reverse is true. So I go into a meeting, and what's his first name? My American?
James.
James. So James comes in just because he's from the U.S. And I could be the most qualified person in the room. My coworker is just going to take the chair and Jim sit here and is going to assume that Jim is going to be the doctor of this, blah, blah, because what your country means to the world and to that person, maybe that person has a son that wants to go to the U.S., right? All these things. And in some cultures, foreigners, and that's another cultural trait, in some cultures, you have to give more respect and consideration to the foreigner. It doesn't have to be also because it's the U.S., or it could be, she could be coming from, I don't know, Vietnam.
Canada.
Okay, she was also the neutral. Okay, she's just from the neutral Canada. Canada is like, from this perspective, Canada is about the same as the U.S. And yeah, so the whole idea is that we have to challenge. I do that a lot to challenge them, to say you have to wait and see what this person has to say. So we have some people are very good at going in and integrating the environment in the way she's saying, ask the question, try to hear the stories. Others are just coming in. Human beings are human beings. They will abuse and use and abuse power that's given to them. So we see some, the most powerless person just being used and abused because of his understanding of what relationship he should be building with a foreigner coming to his environment. I just wanted to stress that it's equally true, that it goes both ways. And the last thing I should say is that on the issue of the age, the culture, the religion, these are very sensitive issues where you have some extremism. And we, in my region, the rise of extremism is very real. And extremism is not so necessarily related to religion only. That's the one the media always talks about. But I'm just talking about someone who will say, I don't want you to marry someone because it's from that ethnic group. That's the type of extremism I'm talking about. And so you have some groups that you cannot touch. And I'm not working on that. I'm working on the middle people, the progressive, the majority, the silent majority, those who are willing to question themselves. So all these things to me are part of the whole inclusion. You know, people like to take extremes to say, oh, we can't go to that country. We can't work with these people. Senegal is 96% Muslim, but believe me, it's one of the most tolerant countries within the West Africa group, because I'm from Guinea. I know Mali, I know all these countries where there's over 90% Muslim people. But Senegal you can see the same family, a Christian and a Muslim, and someone who decided to convert back to Christianity. So they have a very moderate approach to religion. So they're very open to foreigners. But it's not true for everyone. So I just want to say that again, being in the middle is always the best for me. My father is Muslim, my mother is Christian. We were raised in a very open, progressive environment. That's why I believe in being in the center. But I think that everybody is comfortable where they are most of the time, and they don't want to walk towards the unknown.
How are you doing for time?
It's over.
All right then, we're done.
Thank you so much. We should take the photos, I think. That's the photo.
Thank you, Annemarie. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now we should connect them for them.
Okay.
Yes, we need a group photo.
Okay. Oh, that's why you came. Come on up.
Oh, you can group shot.
No, I'm just joining you. Okay.
Come on.
Everyone.
I bring up a
Lost her background. Well, this is the audio we should get. Maybe we should stand there with the chairs and we can work the background. That's the woman in uniform.
This has something of a warm here, and a warm which is here, and a warm which is here.
True. Yes.
This, I read it, a quick preface I went through, and I got the book. This one, wow. It's not working by your bone, it's working by your heart, by your soul, by your mind. I'm telling you, know Dominique?
Yes, you're absolutely.
Otherwise, Dominique is going to, not hand me up for life. Wrong thing. Plus, Dominique is a mother of a beautiful girl, a very angelic girl. Is sitting here.
Oh.
Darling, come here. Come here. So, she is a beautiful girl of Germany, and a born writer. Maybe she one day I will be reading her also. And here we are going to start a session, and I'm very happy to see all the ladies are sitting here and want to take something to their home, to their life, to their family. Dominique, the stage is yours, and me and God is yours. Thank you, ladies.
So my name's Dominique Sakoilsky. I come from Bristol. I come from the UK, and I hope you can take something back with you, which will be useful and practical in your life, in all your relationships. And we're going to have a bit of time for questions at the end. So if you don't feel that I've made something helpful and practical and useful for you in your real life, then please, bring some questions forward, and maybe we can do something then. So to say a little bit about myself, I'm a mother of 3. Elmer is my youngest child. I have 2 sons, 28 and 25, so my children are growing up. I'm actually not going to talk about that book, which is about birth, but I am in the process of writing another book around relationships. And to say a little bit about kind of where I come from an Anglo-Irish family. There were 7 children in my family of origin. And I kind of have reflected a lot on that part of my life and realised that where some girls and boys were sort of born engineers and were always like looking at bridges and cars and how did this work in the world and how did that work, I was always interested in the sort of engineering of relationships, the less seen, the energetic, the invisible, the emotional, and trying to make sense of my world in a less sort of concrete way. And it's only in the last few years I really realised that often I was told as a child I asked far too many questions, and it was probably incredibly irritating to my mother of 7 children. You know, with her 7 children, she didn't need one of them to be so. But I was always trying to make sense of my world in that way, and I guess always trying to understand communication. I'm absolutely passionate and fascinated by communication, and the same about relationships. So in Bristol, I work as a couple and family therapist, and I do a lot of birth work, and I'm also a craniosacral therapist, so I work with the body as well, listening to the body, listening to couples, listening to individuals, listening to myself. So that's kind of my point of interest, if you like. And I started my work about 27 years ago with Louise, who's here, who's my co-founder of this company, Relaxed Birth and Parenting. And my initial interest was very much in the relationship between mother and child and working with pregnant women, hence that book. And I think what really fascinates me about that early time and that early life is that as a human being, we don't have an experience of being informed without being in a relationship. So from the earliest moment of conception, we are in relationship to other, to ourself, to our environment, to mother, and if that's your belief system, it is mine, to the divine. And so we're also meeting the first boundary right from the offset, right from the egg and the sperm, the conception, the beginning of life. We come into this process of creation, but we're always in relationship. And what really fascinates me is that we're all going to have a very different experience of that relationship. So we could take the same little embryo and, we could take different embryos and put them in the same womb, and they're going to have an entirely different experience of that. So there's something there about taking responsibility for the way that we as an individual inhabit ourselves, inhabit our relationships, our emotional life, and how we... Is that? Yes, okay, I was talking to this. So, from that earliest start, from those very early cells, we begin to navigate our way and embody ourselves into this baby that will then be born 9 months later. And we're receiving everything we need for that journey through the umbilical cord from our mother. And there's been incredible research now. I've also studied a lot of perinatal psychology, and I'm very interested in early imprinting, early attachment, and the life of the baby in the womb. And I would never want to make an assumption for any human being or any baby, but I'm always curious about how babies will inhabit themselves and their birth journey, for example, differently. So we can never say that, oh, this birth was easy for that baby, or this birth was difficult for that baby, or this journey with that mother was easy or difficult. It will be up to each individual to come back to themselves and make sense of their relationships and their journey for themselves. And I think that's a really important part of understanding relationship. I think I talk about that early start with babies. I've long time, I love babies. I think, where do they come from? You know, I absolutely love babies in their innocence, and I think they are like divinity, really, unfolding. And where do they come from? They don't come with loads of perceptions, and we've talked a lot in different, I've been to so many wonderful talks, but we've been learning about the huge sort of impact of the unconscious and how that interplays around choices and reactions or responses, how we respond to each other, how we respond to our own emotional life, and how we make sense of our world will very much depend on us as an individual. I think it's quite common sometimes for any of us to make big generalizations around relationships. I'm also very interested in language, how we talk about our experiences, how we talk about other people. And there's little pointers sometimes, I think, which I'm going to share with you,
which can be a little point of interest that we might notice for ourselves where we're projecting. And of course, we're all projecting all the time. And I sometimes think that projections is a little bit like tennis. We sort of bat it back and forth, back and forth, and react a little bit back and forth like that to each other. So one of the things I want to share with you is it's a 7-word system. It comes from the work of a teacher, a meditation Sufi teacher called James Burgess. And it's a system that he developed to make clear thinking, so we can have clear communication and then clear action. And I've taken what I've learned from him, and he's taught me very generously, and brought that to the work of relationships. So we might say that each of those 7 words is like also could be seen as a 7 states. So that the word is not just the word, but there's sort of a state of being. And I'm going to offer you, for each one of those words, I would like you to look at it as a little bit like a wet wipe, if you know what I mean. A cleaning cloth, so that you might clean your lens with each of those 7 states, and we can free ourselves up to come back to that place within us where we actually know the truth of ourselves and each other, and we can join with each other without getting all these little complicated sort of patterns, if you like, that get in the way. So one story I have to tell you, which kind of for me really highlights how easy and how deep those projections can go, is that I was working with a couple, I think it was like a couple of years ago, a really beautiful young couple, and they came to me because they just wanted to sort of check out really, is this the partner for life? Is this the person I want to get married to and have children with? Is this? And they were always doing a lot of evidence gathering, I will call it. So we're going to think a little bit about evidence gathering. What is the kind of evidence we are gathering for ourselves, about others, and about relationships? Because when we're gathering evidence, we're probably not seeing somebody clearly. We're gathering some kind of evidence which is to back up some story that we have about ourselves or the world and our life. And because of those very early imprints around relationship, when you're in uterus with mother, I think it's definitely comes from a place of survival. In order to thrive and grow and embody ourselves in the uterus, that exchange is very basic and very much about survival patterns. So I think that when we're a bit stressed in relationship or triggered, those kind of reactions can go very deep, and we can be quite reactive to each other. But rather than taking ownership of our reactions, it's quite tempting and quite compelling, it would appear, and I know that for myself, to project outwards and blame somebody else. So there's one place where I say when you notice that kind of trigger in yourself from another human being, whether it's somebody very close to you or somebody a bit further afield, perhaps one of your children, a loved one, a partner, an extended family member, a work colleague. I think for me, that moment when you notice that trigger is first of all stop. Because it's so easy to come out of ourselves and put interest on the other person and then gather more evidence as to why that really is true about the other person. And we're sort of totally taking ourselves out of the equation. And though we can do that, it might be fun, it might not. I personally don't feel it will ever lead to freedom. If we want to find real freedom and joy in ourselves and our relationships, and really inhabit ourselves absolutely fully and be able to commune with people, then we need to be able to come back to ourselves when we notice that trigger and just try and understand from our own experience what is touching in us. Almost like just get more interested in you, and at that point perhaps less interested in speculating about what the other person is or isn't doing. And I think certainly as a mother, I think it's very easy to be subtly projecting on children all the time, and then gathering evidence to suggest why your projections, your worry or your anxiety are real. Instead of just recognizing, bringing it back to yourself, owning what it touches in you, understanding it perhaps from a historical perspective, and then freeing up the child to be themselves so that you're not always pushing your stuff out on them. And it can be the same in partner relationships, husband and wife relationships, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, and just friendships generally, in every sense. So we're going to start moving on, to the next bit. But I just remembered I never told you the story. So I'm going to tell you the story. So this lovely young couple came, and they were gathering evidence and saying this and that, and they came in one week, and they were very cross, they were very angry with each other. Well, the woman particularly was really quite angry, and she sat down and she said, I think it's not going to work, I can see he's not the guy. So I said, tell me what's happened. And they said that they had decided to make a beautiful meal together, and they went out to the shops on a Saturday to buy this beautiful food and to come home and to cook this meal together. And they were both hungry, but they were just planning what they would cook. And while they were doing that, the man made himself a cheese sandwich. And he was hungry, and he thought, I'll make a quick cheese sandwich while we're preparing the food, and then we could cook together and we would eat together. Well, the woman went absolutely ballistic. I mean, she said, well, there you go, Dom. I mean, you know, at that point, I knew it. It couldn't happen. He's not a team player. And I thought, wow, that's quite a strong reaction. She was full of judgment for him. She said, at this point, I knew he could never be my husband. Who would ever make a cheese sandwich and agree to make a meal together, and then somebody goes off and just looks after themselves and makes their own little cheese sandwich? So selfish. It was like and she really had a very, very emotional response to this, which I thought, wow, well, that's interesting. So I asked her if she wanted to explore a little bit about, you know, where that came from, such a strong reaction, and if she did bring it back to herself, and we explored a little bit, where might it have come from? And we had done some work in the past about her family of origin experience. She came from a very loving family, very close, very caring, and but what we discovered when we went deeper underneath the sort of upset, if you like, of this cheese sandwich situation, and the team player, or not the team player, was that in her family, there was 3 children in her family before she was born, and the 3rd child, a little boy, had died before she was born. And even though she came from this incredibly loving and inclusive kind of family, she never felt totally part of her family, because all the others in her family shared these memories of this little boy and always spoke about him. And she was quite a lot younger than the other children, and they would always talk about this sibling with such care and fondness. And she just felt she was always on the outside, never part of the team, even though, you know, on the surface of it, on the depth of it, they were very loving people. And in that, she had to sort of own her own grief about what she was feeling. And in a way, that's a perfect example of the way that we sort of project onto relationships, because for her to feel safe and to find a husband, if you like, that was going to meet what she needed to make sure that he was going to be a team player, i.e. he was never going to leave her out. He was never going to make a cheese sandwich when they were agreed to make a joint meal together. So for me, it was kind of like the perfect example of why sometimes we can be so reactive to such a tiny detail, because actually these things go so deep, and you know, we don't even know, like, you know, how was her mother in the pregnancy, and this is never about judging a mother, because there will always be conditions, and you could say limitations in a way, in terms of meeting the needs of another, from one human being to another, and that's from mother to child, because we're different. In our humanness, we're different. Of course, if we go bigger and deeper than that, we can join, but in our humanness, we're very different from each other. And so, when I say that projections are a little bit like tennis, of course, if we went then to him, how did you feel, I asked him, about this big reaction about the cheese sandwich? And if, again, he was incredibly offended and really went into his pattern, which was to withdraw and to shut down to her, really, and be very, very upset. And when we explored for him, because in a way she was projecting an idea of badness onto him. He was a bad man because he made this cheese sandwich. And he had an experience in his early life. Again, he came from a loving family, but he wasn't very understood in his family. He was very different to his family. And he didn't feel kind of the same, if you like, as the other siblings. And he'd been very bullied at school. So he had felt that a lot of badness through his life was being projected onto him. Now, my experience of working with couples, and I work with a lot of couples, is that we, each of us, anyone in partnership, generally handpicks somebody who's going to be probably a very great teacher and touch a particular button. You could say that they couldn't have picked better. He could have badness continually projected onto him, and she could have loneliness and sort of, feeling out of the circle as an experience of her. I don't say that as a negative thing, because I think ultimately if you can understand that reactivity, which they took great care to understand, and they were willing to, then I think that we have an opportunity to heal it, because in truth, he really was a team player. He was a beautiful man, and she was not wanting to put badness onto him. In fact, the couple decided after that, they did actually separate, and they were a young couple, and they decided that they weren't going to kind of go forward together. And so I don't think it's about necessarily owning your projections and then keep taking whatever is your trigger from somebody else at all. But it's about making clear, conscious choice in every moment from a clear space, from a space where you're not looking for the evidence from the other that they are not meeting what you need. When I think of a baby, yes, a baby needs, what does a baby need? I think a baby needs love. A baby needs to know that it's lovable, that it's loved, and that it's able to extend love to others. I think as human beings, really, that's all we need. And I don't think babies are born immediately with loads of ideas about, what to look for and what not, and gathering evidence and this kind of thing and the other. So I think there is some place where I would love for all of us to just remind ourselves that we have that ability and that freedom and that power within us, if we choose to take it, to stop projecting, to come back to self, to take a pause moment, and then what is it here that I'm really trying to sort of project outwards? So we're going to go through my seven-word system, if you like, which is about, like I say, if you imagine you've got these lenses on, and you're just going to have a little wipe to kind of wipe each lens. So hopefully by the time you've been through the 7 lenses, we're all going to be rather clear-sighted and see people really for the truth of who they are, which is this incredible being unfolding before me. I want to be clear that doesn't mean that if I'm seeking love in unlikely places, which is often what we do also, isn't it? Seek love in places where, probably that person isn't necessarily in capacity to be giving love to you, and sometimes relationships are abusive. It's not about just accepting everybody for who they are. I think we can never make meaning of somebody else's behaviour. And I think in projection world, we often try and make meaning of other people's behaviour. We often speculate, and then they did this because that's the kind of person they are, or then they did that because they're so selfish. I would say that the biggest problem in relationships, from what I see as I sit with couples, and I know that for myself in my life, is miscommunication and projection. So that we just bounce this back and forth between each other without really understanding something a bit bigger and a bit more truthful. So the first of these points that I'd like to share with you is no. The word in the state is no. It's a state of no. It's about boundaries. It's about identity. It's about making clear choices. It's about finding your truth. And like I say, a baby coming into form is already in a boundary. Is that I'm not you in that human difference. Yes, in that God place, we can join, and maybe, if we go through these states, we'll get to yes, where we join. But in the beginning, there has to be a recognition of difference. I went to a workshop here a little bit earlier in the week, and we were being reminded of the differences in the physiology between men and women. But there's many differences between women, from woman to woman, and then in our humanness, we have personality and astrology or karma or whatever you want to put there and understand it. There's going to be differences. So the important thing to recognise is that in boundary, we're just owning our own preferences. We don't need to defend them. They're just our preferences. They're not a universal truth. I think it's very common to try and make our boundary a universal truth. Everybody would think that, or all people believe that. But the truth is, even if we think in this room, like we could probably share on some boundaries that we really would share on, like, violence in relationship is not acceptable. And I'd like to say, well, that's a universal truth across the globe. But it wouldn't be truthful, because there's so many relationships where there's domestic violence that cannot be the truth. It's my truth, and other people can share in it, but other people will have a different truth. So knowing your own boundaries is very important, and I think understanding why boundaries go so deep is also important. So I'm just going to refer back up to the baby in the womb, which has that boundary and that umbilical cord connection between mother and baby, which gives that baby everything it needs to survive. So we're learning very early on about how we have our needs met. How does that feel like? How do we experience this womb space? There's been some research in the last few years, and I've learned this from a man called Carlton Terry, who's a great American perinatal psychologist. And he has shown studies where, looking at babies in the uterus through scanning and stuff, some babies squeeze their umbilical cord. Obviously not all the time, they die, if they did. But what they're doing then is they're mitigating, if you like, what's coming in. So it could be emotional toxicity in the form of hormones. Obviously a baby isn't there in its cortex brain thinking, wow, Mum's really angry again. but the baby will be experiencing a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress hormones, and maybe that doesn't feel so great. So there has been studies that have shown that babies are mitigating boundaries, if you like, negotiating boundaries from even the earliest, taking a little bit of time out by squeezing the cord. And babies do all kinds of things in the uterus that's been seen in that way. So again, it is never for me about judging a mother, but nor do I believe that a mother can ever provide a baby with a perfect womb. It's not possible. We're different. It's kind of when we begin to learn about the conditions of life. And life is conditioned. We are in bodies. We are in bones and pelvises with skin and boundaries. And I think that sometimes boundaries can be quite a difficult place for people to manage and negotiate in relationships. And I think that from my own understanding, I would say that we often judge people for the boundaries they bring if we don't agree with them. You know, we can be very reactive to somebody else's boundaries. If we find it hard to own our own boundary, to say, actually, here's my no, then I think it's tempting sometimes to make somebody else wrong, so that we had to put that boundary there in a big way. Because rather than just ask for what we needed, which is basically what a boundary is, we find that difficult, then we might have to make a big dramatic thing to make this thing happen and make the other person wrong. So I want you to think about, after this workshop and even in this moment, you know, what kind of boundaries go really deep for you? You know, sometimes I know that for me, I probably don't always find it that easy to ask for what I need. Historically, family of 7 kids and lots of other family in that great big old chaotic Anglo-Irish family. You know, there wasn't a lot of capacity for my mother to meet lots of individual needs. So I learned to take care of myself. You know, I was pretty independent. And so it isn't always easy for me to ask for what I need. So sometimes, when I have asked for what I need, in probably quite a quiet and subtle way, if that is missed, and it might even just be a little thing, a little bit like a cheese sandwich, I could be really explosive. And my husband might say, my goodness, you know, wow, that is some strong reaction for that little thing. But it isn't a little thing. It's because it went somewhere really deep and really early when I was trying to establish and learn from what I needed. So think about your own boundaries, and if you see somebody else getting upset about boundaries, listen to them. Get curious. Find out. Why is that important to you? Because if you don't, and you only react to that, then you kind of miss an opportunity to learn something really important and deep about somebody else. So I think of boundaries, yes, as the guy ropes of a tent. I have a lovely big white canvas bell tent in England with my ropes, and I love to go camping. And if the ropes are just rigid, too tight, the whole structure's a bit rigid and inflexible and really not very safe. It doesn't make the space inside feel kind of able to fluctuate with inside and outside influences. If those ropes are really loose, then again it's very vulnerable, isn't it, from outside and inside influences. So whether you're creating a work project, relationships with your children, with partners, loved ones, mothers, fathers, extended families, whoever, think about the kind of guide ropes that are important to you and that help you feel like you're making a really clear, safe space inside. Clear boundaries enable you to know something truthful about yourself and another. So once we've kind of got that clear, we can be relaxed about our boundaries. We can be confident. We can really be respectful, self-respectful, and confident in ourselves. And then we would move to the second wisdom, which is the state of hello. So it's almost like I've made my boundaries, I'm in my skin, I'm in my body, I know who I am, and now I can look outwards with curiosity and wonder. Wow, look. Because if I only stayed in the state of no, I'd be an island, and I'd be very lonely. So very, 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 very boundary people can sometimes be very isolated and very alone, a bit of an island. So if you want to connect more, you know, human beings, I believe, yearn for connection, you know, and ultimately communion. They want to meet each other. You know, we yearn in a way for good attention. So the state of hello is that kind of open, active listening. You know, we can't do that to each other all the time. But I don't know if you've had the experience, I'm sure you have this week, had the experience of people here listening to you in a very non-judgmental way. They're switching on their ears. I've got a lovely colleague in England who talks about, are we listening with ears that are willing to hear? Do we really want to understand something about what this person is telling us? And sometimes I think that we can listen much more actively to people we don't know very well, probably, than to the people that are around us in our home life. I could certainly put my hand up for that one. You know, don't want to hear, or no, that's not true, or I can prove it because on the 16th of the 8th I remember that never happened. I'm not listening, if that's the kind of way I'm, or we don't always, around the, oh my goodness, there's the man there in the purple shoes. No, I never really like people with purple shoes, so I'm not going to, we have all kinds of prejudices, don't we, that stop us from really thinking, who is this human being in front of us? And I think that active listening, or listening to another human being in terms of your relationships, sometimes in this way, you can't do it all the time, but sometimes noticing, I think this would be a good time to really switch on those ears. I'm going to learn something important. Is a little bit like bringing medicine. So if you have something difficult going on or something, or you just feel like somebody's in a certain space and maybe they're not sharing it, but it would be good to switch on your ears and see what happens. And I'm going to tell you, if you have somebody in your life that is a little bit sort of triggering for you, switch on those ears the next time you see them and really try and understand something about them and just watch what happens. I'm going to give you that. So, white number 2 is the state of hello. Really being open and listening. And I have got, yes, did you see that? Ruby, go back one now. What you seek is seeking you. Because ultimately, in the state of hello, we commune with each other. And it's almost like the namaste. The God in me can meet the God in you. And actually, it doesn't matter about our differences. At this point, the boundaries are, irrelevant. Because we've done that. We've been there, we're relaxed. And now we can really able to start to meet something else in each other. Once we've kind of communed with somebody, it would seem such a natural kind of progression to me that we would move into the state of thank you. And the state of thank you is very clearly an important one when we think about relationships, because it's about the heart. And for women and relationship, I would say it's about oxytocin. Oxytocin is like the hormone of love. When we share food with people that we love, when we hang out with people that we love, when we listen to music that we love, when we kind of feel emotions and let them flow. The state of thank you is about emotional intelligence, and it's about being able to let the heart be present without defences. And I think, again, it can be very soft. For some people, they naturally, I would say that, actually I would say that for Louise and Elmer, so I'm very lucky in my life to have 2 thank you type people, around me a lot of the time. Some people, it's a natural state. They just can be in their heart and sharing from that loving place very easily. And for other people, for all kinds of reasons, it just doesn't feel safe. Everybody has a heart. Everybody can produce oxytocin. Everybody can move into that kind of emotionally intelligent place and let defences go. But for some of us, maybe for some people, it's a state that needs to be, consciously chosen. It's about appreciation. It's about valuing. Again, I've had some really interesting talks I've been to this week. Somebody talking about valuing and how we increase the value of something by inhabiting that state. So I'm going to encourage you to keep kind of coming back when you want to a place of appreciation and state of thank you. Every day. Every day, it's good to nourish the heart by bringing in, the state of thank you. And after thank you, it's a nice idea to think in relationship, we would all just hang out in the state of thank you all the time. But let's be honest, you get a couple of people together, 2 soulmates, they find each other. Now, if we put them in a room and we lock the door and we walked away, eventually they'd probably be scuffling and irritating each other. Now, that might take 1 hour, it might take 16 years, it might take 52 years, or it might take 5 months. But eventually, 2 human beings are going to have to kind of negotiate, if you like, their differences. That soulmate no longer feels like a soulmate, they're actually rather irritating. The fact that they were so chatty and sort of enthusiastic in the beginning becomes a bit too much like a loud noise 6 months in. There's going to be different, we're going to have to be real and honest with ourselves about kind of what's feeling. And I would say that the state of goodbye is like the state of warrior. It's the state where we do conscious conflict. I'm passionate about conflict resolution because I think that human beings do often have to negotiate. human beings will often be negotiating differences. I said I wanted the story to go, and I think I just jumped the fence a bit. And I think that about learning how to manage our differences in that way is important. So state of goodbye is also about commitment. Am I committed enough to this relationship to want to work out the differences? Am I brave enough to be honest in my communication with this person? Can I do conflict in a clean way where I can bring forward what it is that I feel angry about maybe, but without dumping that on the other person and making that wrong? Can I own my own anger without making somebody else wrong in the process? Because anger is a human emotion. It can't be wrong because it is a human emotion. We all feel it sometimes. Sometimes it's really useful information that we feel somebody has overstepped our boundary. And sometimes perhaps they really haven't done very much, but because it touches a place where our boundaries are a little bit weak or a little bit less than clear, we can feel like they have overstepped a boundary. And maybe they have for us. So, state of goodbye, yes, is... Oh, you can move on now to state of goodbye, please. Yeah, I call it the gardening work. You know, get busy, get gardening, get weeding. You know, start having a look at it. What's going on in your relationship? Get real. Let's start looking at the nitty-gritties. So I feel like a lot of the work I do with couples and families and parents and children is doing gardening work around their relationships. And sometimes people say, isn't that a bit petty that people are coming and they're paying you this money and then all you're talking about is, you know, who left the top off the toothpaste and who didn't and who did and that kind of thing. But that's the kind of nitty-gritty stuff that can make relationships tense. So let's not shy away from it. Let's understand it. So there's quite a connection between state of goodbye and no. I would say that people that are can have good, clear boundaries are often people that are very good at state of goodbye. They can do their gardening work. They're not afraid. And I would say that if you're somebody who struggles a little bit with state of no and owning and communicating your boundaries, then it's possible that you might find this kind of state of goodbye also a little bit challenging because it's going to ask for similar things, really. So your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. I often meet people who come to me and say, I want to find love. Please help me. I want a partner. I want a husband. I want a wife. And, they think it's all about looking out there and just seeing what they can find and then picking that. But actually, we all have our own defences that we built around our heart. And it's about taking ownership of that and freeing it up a bit, cleaning that lens. So don't be afraid of conflict. If you're conflict averse, that has its own problems in relationships. I would say that often if I see a couple and they never ever have conflict, they come and they say, oh, we're really sweet with each other. We just never argue and we never have fights, we don't have any conflict, but they're sat in front of me and I think, okay, so how might I help you? They probably haven't had sex for the last 15 years. And that's usually what they're bringing if there's no conflict. Because there is a similarity between risking conflict with a loved one in an intimate relationship and a sexual relationship in a long-term relationship. Because both will ask you to be exposed, if you like, and show something of yourself, whether it's boundaries, or whether it's, when you show boundaries or when you show what you're kind of upset about, it is a risk, isn't it? You don't want to be shamed, you don't want to be judged, you've got to be brave. And also to be able to say and communicate those things in a gentle way, I think is a very skillful thing to be able to do. And ongoing work for us all, I would say. So the next state is the state of please, because when we've kind of done that gardening work a bit, and we've risked a bit of conflict resolution or integration, then we can kind of put things down, we can move on. We're a bit freer, a bit lighter, we can move on and we think, okay, we've done that, we faced it, we had the tricky conversation. We didn't want to have it, but we did have it. And now we can all feel like, whew, really glad I got that out of the way. So then we can open ourselves to the state of please. What is my vision for my relationship? If you don't have a vision, how can anybody else kind of interface with you in relationship and meet what you need? You don't even know what you need. How on earth would anybody else be able to meet what you need? So You know, it's often people will be quite general in that way. I think any of us can be quite general with the state of please. Go, I just want to feel loved, as if that's the other person's job. Actually, that bit comes from you. But aside from that, because you're going to be doing your own gardening work around that, what would you like? You know, what else would you like? And then how do you find that? What makes you feel loved? Because it's about having the same sort of love language, isn't it? There's all these different books these days and different theories, if you like, that we talk in different love languages. So somebody feels really loved with a gesture, a little cup of tea by the bedside every morning, and somebody else feels loved because somebody is massaging their shoulders all the time, and somebody else might feel loved because somebody's saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Somebody else needs flowers. Somebody else just needs the recycling taken out every Thursday. You know, it's different for all of us, isn't it? You know how you feel loved.
And somebody is, don't make cheese sandwiches.
Don't make a cheese sandwich for that lovely lady anyway. For somebody else, they might look at that person making a cheese sandwich and think, oh, that's so sweet. They're so hungry, like an innocent little child who just feeding themselves along the way. We're all different, aren't we? Yeah. So stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. You have the right to define what you want in a relationship. You have the right to have a vision of your relationship. You have the right to take action. Action is intention. State of please is about vision, it's about intention, and it's about cooperation, and then it's about prayer. It's about putting it out to the universe. So we start with a vision. I'd like it to be like this. And then we have to move with intention. If we have vision with no intention, we only have a daydream. If we want to make it something more than a daydream, we've got to get working, get going, get moving. Ask, you know, for what we want. And the cooperation bit is none of us will ever get our vision manifest without the help of others. So we need to reach out to others. We need to join our vision with other people's visions. And if it's not this person because they don't share that vision, somebody else will be. There'll always be somebody who will be, you know, willing to cooperate with our vision. And you know, and prayer is like once you've done that, and you put it out to the universe, you put it out to your people, your community, or your partner, or your child. Then you let go. Then it's not your business. At that point, you know, you let it go. You've done your bit, and maybe your vision shows up in the way you thought, or maybe it's an entirely different vision. Actually, what comes forward in the end with that cooperative kind of endeavour, if you like. But at the same time, it meets the vision of what you hope for in a relationship. After the state of please, we come to the state of sorry. And I would say that this state is in a way the sort of twinkling, shining, sparkling, most important state of all the states we're talking about today. Because I'm talking about projections, and I'm talking about cleaning the lens. And the state of sorry is totally about owning projections. And sometimes people would say to me, but Dom, why would the state of sorry come after the state of please when we've been asking for these lovely things that we want? And I would say that's because once we get a clear vision and we put that out there, we shoot that arrow, sometimes some of our baggage, if you like, our less than resolved stuff, our less integrated stuff, kind of comes forward, says, hi, you know, you might need to just do a little bit more work on this bit, because it's getting a little bit in the way of your vision. And I would say this state is about self-acceptance and atonement, and ultimately it's about self-forgiveness. And I think that often with forgiveness work, we again can think it's all about forgiving out there. Now that might be part of the journey, forgiving out there. But I would say that oftentimes it's actually about forgiving ourselves, because either in our less refined places, we're projecting our stuff onto other people, or partners or significant others in our lives, or we might be taking on other people's projections and making them mean something about ourselves. And we've certainly done lots of lovely work this week, and I'm looking at Linda particularly over there, about clearing and cleansing ourselves of these unconscious, subconscious kind of little kind of things, not good enough, got it wrong, abandoned, expect to be rejected. What else should we throw a few more in? What's shame. You know, and I think that in our experiences as a human being, you know, we will all be probably bringing up some of those as part of our humanness. And I think that it can show up so easily in relationships. For example, perhaps somebody comes from a difficultly angry background. Perhaps there's been a lot of anger and conflict that has felt unsafe for that person as a child. It could have even been violence, physically or emotionally. Or somebody could come from a background where there is no anger. We don't do anger in this family. We don't do conflict, especially in England. We sit it up and we don't risk it, and we're all just very nice and polite. But there's a lot of passive-aggressive anger and unowned anger that can go on in that. And that can be very toxic. So often when I'm working with couples and one of them is saying, I'm bringing you my partner, you need to sort them out because they're just really angry and it's outrageous. They're aggressive and violent and I mean obviously and this place I'm talking about in a second, I'm not talking about domestic violence, but it could be that somebody with unresolved anger issues or experiences of violence as a child might almost like I would say it's the soul's yearning to heal actually in picking triggering partners. So be very curious about couple fit, about the people you choose to have around you, the friends, the people you've had relationships with. What is it that you really find difficult about them? How do they trigger you? And why is that from your perspective? Because often more people will pick, say, this angry person, and then we look and maybe they came from a family where they didn't do anger. So they pick somebody who's quite angry, knocking on the door with anger again, because in a way, the universe is trying to say, you need to sort this out. You need to get real and clear and own your own anger rather than picking an angry person to do it for you. But I think at that point again, we have a choice. And I think a lot of relationship stuff is about choice in the moment and being very mindful. Because it's very easy in that moment, again, to project out of yourself and get very interested and blameful, feeling fed up with a relationship, and then the only way to do it is to take this person along to Dom. She's going to sort out their anger issues, and then we're back on a straight kind of line. But actually, it can't be like that. And I think the choice in that moment, when you feel activated in your relationship, the first point in finding freedom, and a very important cleansing wipe for your lens, is get curious about why that is triggering you. And I think that some of the kind of language around projection in this kind of place is the sort of thing where you try and make what's happening sound like a universal truth. Well, everybody would react to them like that. Well, actually they wouldn't. And it's kind of the place where, would you allow a partner that you have to show up in any emotional form? Is that okay for you? I'm not talking about, people overstepping the boundary in terms of being abusive or emotionally, but it's almost like in that clear place, if somebody were showing up in that way, you would be able to make a choice and go boundary and go, do you know what, this is probably not working for me. But otherwise, I would say that the point of interest is to come back to yourself. One of the questions I often ask couples when I'm working with them is that if you were going to show up and show up now to meet your partner for the first time, and you were going to say, here I am, I'm here for a relationship, I've come to join you. I just want to warn you, I've got a couple of things in my backpack that are less than helpful. A couple of things you need to know about me in relationship, because they're probably, things are a little bit unresolved and they're going to come forward and maybe, bite you on the bottom. What would you own? And just take a moment there to think about that for yourselves. If you were going to own something that you were just warning a future partner about, that they would have to be sort of coming into contact with if they were in a relationship with you, what would that be? What would you need to own? Because if you don't know that, and you don't have the knowledge for that, it's very possible and very likely you're going to be projecting it outwards and then making them wrong for it. Another thing I would notice, I would say, in this state is that often the very thing that you picked a partner for, I love them for this, or I love them because they were so calm and quiet and, internal, and, it was also calm and grounding and that kind of thing. Then, maybe 3 years on, you're saying, they never initiate everything, I'm the one who has to organise all holidays, they never think, they don't come forwards, they don't communicate with me, they don't connect with me, they're not sharing with me. So sometimes the very thing we pick that brings us in is actually the thing that kind of later on we struggle with. Because that's the point when you're deepening your relationship, and I often think that when relationships are struggling, it's about growing pains. Your relationship is trying to grow. And growing might mean that that's the end of it, because it actually isn't a relationship that serves and works you anymore in truth. Or it might be just that you've got to get bigger in your relationship. You've got to take back your projections. I think that we refine each other like sandpaper in relationship. Human beings grow in relationship to each other. We are sandpaper to each other. Our children are sandpaper to the parents. You know, I would say that each of my children, in their very different ways, has had an amazing job of trying to rub off my rough edges. You know, and I would say that's what we do to each other, that's what we do to our children, that's what they do to us. We're all like sandpaper, rubbing off our rough edges, trying to make us a little bit more refined. So the state of sorry is a very refined state. It's where we can forgive ourselves for our misperceptions about each other and our projections, and our misperceptions about ourselves, you know, and how we took on negative projections that other people have put on us, and then we defended that place, and then we then projected that onto somebody else, and then they give it back to us, and we're again into tennis, what I call projection tennis, which is boring, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't lead to freedom. So you want to find freedom in your relationship, 100% responsibility for every way that you respond to anybody and everybody. 100% responsibility is the way to find freedom. Oh, did it go? Doesn't matter, it has it can work, it can work. And when you've been in that very kind of more, doesn't matter, oh, I'm standing on it. Okay, we can keep going without it, it doesn't matter actually. Let's just say, you know, we're just letting go about in the state of sorry, honestly, yeah. So, state of sorry is, I don't know if anybody knows that Rumi poem, I like my Rumi poems when we talk about love, where there is a field, I'll meet you there, beyond all ideas, what is that? Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. So when we do our own work in that way, and we're talking about really deep gardening work in state of sorry, then we really don't mind about somebody else. It's the kind of place where we don't want to be putting too much attention to what somebody else is doing wrong. We don't want to be gathering evidence why some other human being is behaving in a way that's unacceptable to us. I kind of think what I'm saying about that is their business. You know, we can say that we're triggered about it, we're going to explore around it, we can go off and do our work. If they're being abusive or manipulative in our experience, we might communicate that and be willing to explore that. But ultimately, one of the biggest mistakes we make, I think, about it in relationship is that we make meaning of other people's behaviour. A bit like the beautiful young woman who made a huge amount of meaning about the cheese sandwich, that the guy was not going to be a life partner. Actually, he's the sweetest man in all the world, but hey, he wasn't maybe right for her, because he probably would keep making cheese sandwiches and it probably would have been really triggering. So I think she made a good choice there. But, you know, it's about actually coming back to self. And when you find yourself speculating and cogitating and agitated, and you're wanting to put all that cogitating energy into making somebody else wrong, again, I'm going to say it again, it's not going to lead to freedom. It's just going to go round and round and round. We will never know what goes on for another person or why they make the decisions they make. And speculating about them is not necessarily very helpful. It's certainly probably not real. Rarely is a speculation right. Unless you want to really go and ask that person, help me to understand that behaviour, because I don't understand it. And I think if you go to someone in a very non-defensive way, you know, and ask for them to explain it, then I think that somebody would feel not attacked. Because the state of sorry projected is a lot of guilt and blame. Guilt and blame, and that's the kind of tennis. Guilt, blame, back, forth, attack, blame, you know. And that's the kind of dance that many relationships go round and round in. But actually, if we can bring it back to ourselves and forgive ourselves for our misperceptions, we're invited to come into that place of divinity within ourselves, the place where the baby first came into form, the place where we were created. And in a way, if we really want to commit in this lifetime to refining ourselves, I would say that relationships is one of the finest and most amazing places to keep refining yourself. Because where relationships show up as difficult, you have an opportunity to take responsibility and forgive yourself for your misperceptions. Maybe that feels like forgiving somebody else, but I feel like forgiveness is like the sort of bridge, if you like, that takes us back to a state of love. It doesn't mean that we necessarily want to keep that person in life or not. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being 100% responsible for yourself and what you bring. So when you've been in that state of sorry, the last state that I'm going to talk to you about before I finish is actually just a state of yes. Because after we've come to a place of peace within ourselves, We're no longer looking to blame and gather evidence and show everybody why that person is wrong in all these many different ways. But we're just wanting to come back to ourselves and find that integration and that love and that self-acceptance. Because actually we don't need to use other human beings to prove that we're wrong or unworthy. Give your fellows, your sisters, your brothers, your lovers, your fathers, your mothers, your children, give them a better purpose. You know, do I give others the purpose of loving me? Well, maybe sometimes I don't, because maybe sometimes I'd rather be gathering evidence of where I'm not lovable. And then I can keep going with an old story, rather than risking something a bit more deep and a bit more truthful. So stated yes is just about permission to surrender. And it doesn't matter then. The details of our humanness, the difference of our humanness, the difference of our skin, our bones, our feet, our toes, our eyes, our hair, these differences don't matter in that place of yes. So these are my 7 wipes that I want to share with you. And I hope you do find them useful. I don't know if anybody's got, if it doesn't feel clear, anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to ask, please feel free to ask me now, because that's all I want to share from this PowerPoint with you today. Thank you for coming, all of you.
Dominique, I have something to ask
Yes.
about. When you say that you talk about the relationships and creating that, removing all those boundaries and creating the freedom and joy, and you also mentioned
Can I
that.
just close that door so I can't hear? Sorry.
And
Yes.
you also mentioned that you're a craniosacral therapist.
Yes.
Is there a possibility, like most of us are, like at least in India, already are in a relationship? I think I'll meet you a little later in my life.
Yes.
So I would like to understand, is there anything that on the physical body which is there that can be activated to free yourself or to bring that joy in your space, to clear up those spaces within you so that what you're projecting, you can take the projections away?
Yeah.
So could you
For me, what comes to mind is because I think relationships are so much of the heart. But I think as women, and I work a lot, I train like health mentors and workshops with birth in England and stuff. I work with the body a lot. I'm also passionate about the body. And I think as women, we have a rather a lucky thing that we have a womb as well as a heart. And in many traditions across the world, a woman's womb is called her second heart, her other heart. And, you know, there is a meridian that runs, it's in a lot of ancient shiatsu texts and herbal texts that talks about this meridian that runs from a woman's heart to her womb back up to her heart. And sometimes women say, well, I haven't got a womb because I've had a hysterectomy, or we're talking about an energetic centre of creation. And I think the wonderful thing for women, where we're lucky, is that we have a cycle. We have a women's cycle, and we have a bigger cycle from menarche to menstruation to menopause, where we live life and death and creation every month or in different seasons of our life. So I guess I would say that because we can create, you know, the universe is created within us, then actually those two places to me feel like but just being comfortable in our own skin, just doing anything and everything that helps us to feel freer and more comfortable in our own skin, I believe, will help you to find absolute freedom in your relationship. And for somebody that might be through body work, and somebody else that might be through more mental processes or yoga, but if you're coming back to yourself and nourishing the divinity within you, then you couldn't fail to be bringing that to your relationship. You know, it's not possible that it wouldn't be. And I think just one thing I would like to leave you with is like when, you know, conflict arises or it feels very difficult or very, very triggering, because relationships can be very triggering, can't they? Not to be afraid, to pause, maybe to seek a bit of help, maybe the guidance of a good friend, you know, but not a friend who will sort of help you to gather more evidence about how wrong the other people are or person is. Rather that somebody will challenge you, say, come back to yourself, take 100% responsibility. What is it that you're really working with here? And I think that, it's just another opportunity to grow, isn't it? So don't be afraid when relationships feel difficult. Don't be afraid when you're alone. Don't be afraid when you're in a relationship and it's hard, or you're fighting, or you don't know what's going, you know. Just that you're obviously yearning, I would say, like again, it's like the soul yearning to grow. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
I want to know how you said that if there is any kind of physical process,
yes,
if you would show that
heart
can
womb.
be helpful for those two, Hara and Anahat. If you could activate something there.
Even just a visualization that connects the two, sitting and visualizing that connection, or putting one hand on your womb and one hand on your heart and breathing into that round and round. And sometimes me and Louisa talk many times, or maybe you'll find time this week, one hand, do it on each other with women to women, one hand on the heart, one hand on the womb, working on each other's round, because there's infinite creativity in the heart and love, and infinite creativity and love in the womb. And the ma sound, when you make the sound ma, that strengthens and works on that meridian. Yeah.
That's great.
Simple.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Very nice.
Though there was a lot of kind of technical hindrances in all the session, a little bit delay, but the session was so packed, interactive, that people were even sitting on the floor and listening. That was, kind of a very positive feeling inside, that the people want to take something from Dominique. And then continuing to the session, this is a very high time when we all will be coming here and getting a good photograph with this gorgeous lady. So please, all lovely ladies, do come over here. Join us. All the ladies, please do join us.
Cup of tea.
Grab the test.